We'll do the heavy lifting. We've got means to take care of it. We've got connections where we'll hire the survey if it needs done. We'll get the house cleaned out. We'll do everything necessary that you don't have to. And at the end of the process, we'll leave it broom swept clean and auctioned. And, where you don't need to struggle with, you know, worrying about it. That's the biggest thing. If you're doing estate type work, it's a huge undertaking, and we've got staff that go in, that can take care of everything.
All right, today's guest, Mr. Todd Thompson himself's in the house. How you doing, Todd?
Hello, Chad. I'm doing great. How are you?
Doing good, brother. Doing good. Todd is the founder of Todd Thompson Auctions, where he brings 36 years of experience to the auction and real estate industry. His professional achievements, there's probably one. Do you have one or two achievements so far? Or?
Well, first of all, I'm old, 36 years in the business, and one achievement, I married really well.
You did marry up, for sure. Other than that, though, he is one of the Tennessee Auctioneer state champion bid column. Give me a little bit of it there, brother. Let's go. Yep, yep. Let's
All
go.
right, sold it right
Doing
there. Todd
good.
Thompson Auction. Next item, boys.
So you won it. What year did you win that?
It was a long time ago. 1998 was the Tennessee State Champion. Followed up international bid calling contest, and I was really successful at losing for 7 years, and I finally made the finals like 10 years later. And then kids started coming along, and priorities changed. But I was blessed, to get to compete state and then national recognition too.
So you've been in business 36 years. I guess what do you attribute that to? 36 years business. Probably good partners, right?
Great partners. I've got a super partner right now, and yeah, getting your auction license in Tennessee is a little strenuous. You have to serve an apprenticeship. So I worked for an auctioneer for 10 years, and then we went out on our own, me and another gentleman, Dale Carr, and then he kind of fell in love with politics, and then I got a great auction partner, and he's on the other end of the podcast right now. That's Dale. That's Chad Williams. And how long we
I've
been
been
partners,
called
brother?
Dale. I've been called Dale for 10 years
I
now, I
know you
feel
have.
like. Tell me about the first getting started with Dale. How did that come about?
Well, it was just fortuitous. I was surveying and I was not a licensed surveyor. I was doing that as my line of work. He and I met at a benefit auction and we both started working together doing, charity work, benefits, trying to get enough hours in to get our auction license. And we worked well together. And so it was just determined, the gentleman that we worked with, he was getting out of business and he was phasing out. And so Dale and I decided to hang our shingle out. And that was in, I don't know what year it was to begin with. So I guess it was 2001. Yeah,
It's been a long
just
time,
went
yeah.
out on our own in 2001.
All right. So how scary was it going out on your own? How
Oh,
long did you work? Well, first of all, you started working with what? Scott McCarter.
Scott McCarter for 10
How
years.
long?
He always told me that I was the only apprentice auctioneer that he had that turned a 3-year apprenticeship into 10. And we was with him, both of us, for 10 years, worked with Scott McCarter. Great guy. Learned a really good trade from Scott. And we took that and then we kind of moved forward. But Scott was a good mentor and just a great somebody to work for. And then Dale Carr and I, as I said, worked together for a number of years. And he kind of fell in love with politics, and that opened the door for me to get Chad Williams as a partner auctioneer and
Gosh, what a
real
great
estate
guy.
business. Yeah,
What a
super
great guy.
guy.
What a
He's
great guy.
like me. He married well beyond his means and got a
Good
wife and
looking
two
guy
beautiful
too.
daughters. Like me, 2 girls
That's
and
for sure.
one wife. Been married 43 years. But no, starting out, it was, you pray that we're a general auction firm, meaning that, we do a variety of sales. We specialize in selling real estate at auction, but with real estate, a lot of time comes personal property and equipment or whatever might be inside that business. And so you have to be kind of versed in a lot of different areas in order to, be in a general auction business because that next call may be, a collection of coins. It might be guns. It might be real estate. It could be just a variety of things. We did 8 years. We did collector cars for a promoter, and we sold Corvettes across the auction block, and that was a lot of fun. And so I've loved every minute of it. It's just been changing. We started out 99% of our business was live auctions, and our industry has changed a great deal. And today we still do live auctions. You and I did one the other night. and it was a lot
That
of
was
fun. There's an
fun.
enthusiasm with a live auction that you don't get with an online auction. Online auction has a lot of benefits, you know, whereas it's open to, the world and 24/7 bidding, whereas a live auctions, you got to be geographically there and then on site and in person, sometimes using simulcast it and do a live simulcast with a
Right.
online. I know I got into the logistics of an auction, but I was just touching on, how our business has changed, how a lot of businesses grow and things change. And, we've got 6 auctioneers in the company, and, we all enjoy a live auction.
Which one's
And it's
which
just
one's the
kind of rare
best?
that we do a live real estate auction anymore. A lot of it is done
Todd.
online.
Todd. Which one's the best? Just go ahead and tell me. Which one's the best auctioneer you think?
As far as not going to
Has to be
open up
Daniel.
that can of worms,
It has to
they've
be Daniel. It has
they've
to be Daniel. I mean,
they've
he's
all
like
got great
he knows
attributes. And,
everything.
and I'll be honest, and I told this to somebody, you and I did the event the other night. They were very complimentary and said, you guys were great. And I said, well, thank you. It was a good event and we appreciate it. The most important people at your auction, live auction, is not your auctioneer. It is your ring people. And you and Dale actually worked the ring that night and you made it flow. You created the excitement. You got more money than we anticipated on a lot of the items. And so your auctioneer needs to be a good communicator. He's got to tell the crowd
Right.
how much money he has, how much money he wants. He needs to be very plain spoken, very entertaining, engaging. But your ring people will make or break your auction. And you need to hire professional ring people when you're looking at that auction firm. Yeah, your auctioneer is important, but not as important as all the other team members. And the ring people, in my opinion, are more important than anybody else.
How much you missed the live auctions? I had a good time the other night. It was
I did
fun.
too. Yeah, it's a lot of fun. I get asked that a lot by my wife. When are you going to have a live auction? And you need that. And I think she runs a fundraising arm for a charity that we support, Christian Academy of the Smokies, and we do 2 events for her. An online auction and a live auction where we gather, the families together and do an art auction. Evening at the Academy is called, and there's nothing like a live auction for the involvement. I kind of equate it like this. You go to a football game, and there's nothing like being in the stands and feeling the crowd and the enthusiasm and the excitement. And, yes, there's some of that goes along with an online auction, but it doesn't compare to a live auction. So to answer your question, I miss it a lot. And in the right situations and settings, when you can accommodate a crowd, you can gather everybody together. I think a live auction is deemed appropriate. And when you got a great piece of property, how are trophy items sold? Be it trophy racehorses, trophy real estate, all those things are sold via the auction method because you want to get as much money as you can. There's no cap on an auction. And so that's why they're sold via auction. Art, thoroughbred horses, prime real estate. It's sold via auction, and because they want to get the most that they can, and it's usually done with a live auction. Yeah,
Robertino print. That was great.
we've sold Robertino prints for 36 years, and we had one the other night. It was original oil on canvas, and he's a local artist here in the mountains of East Tennessee, and you leapfrogged me all night. Do you know that? And when I talk to the crowd and saying, leapfrog you, 10 out of the bid, 12 high, I'm at 10, not 12 high, about to get 12 high, and Chad's going over there, 50,000. And that's leapfrogging. And that's really awesome when that occurs. And it occurred 3 or 4 multiple times throughout that selling of that artwork. And then we ended up selling that piece of artwork for 27,500. And that was
I
a
thought
kind
we
of a
would get
record.
her. I thought that I told her 20,000. I said, "You give me 20,000, they're not going to bid over that for sure." And then Dale hit it at 25, and I was like, "But we did get her at 27.5. That's fine. That's good."
Just sometimes that's with a live format that I don't think that it would have brought that much in an online format because you guys created the excitement and you got the bid and you were engaging and that's important. And I love a live auction. Silent, I mean,
Right.
online auction works well too.
Oh,
There's
she was
just a,
done at 12.5. Really?
oh, are you serious?
Yeah, she was done, and poor her husband didn't even know she was bidding, so that was good too. So
Yeah, it's a nice event,
that was
and
fun.
yeah, it's a good
It was good.
fundraiser for a good cause, benefiting our Great Smoky Mountains, Friends of the Smokies.
So what'd you use to start out? I guess when you and Dale went out on your own, what'd you do mostly? Or what
Uh,
was your first? No, what was your first big hit? Let's do that. A
I
lot
think
of
the first
benefits, I
big
know, but
auction was we sold some commercial property with another auction company that we used to work for in Pigeon Forge, Tennessee. It was the Jake Thomas farm, and that was exciting. That was, you could breathe a sigh of relief. We got, chosen to work with another auction firm to pull that together. And at the end of the day, the property sold for 20,806 or $20,086,000, and that was at a live auction format, and that
That
was
makes
fun.
for a happy.
And then we've not had one since that brought that brought that kind of money, but
That
it's
way,
hard to top that,
set those standards. Yeah, set those standards. So,
a high mark.
what kind of yeah, that's for sure. Let's talk about strategy here. What kind of strategy do you have going into auctions?
Well, it all depends on the seller. There's a lot of advantages to an auction, whether it be live auction, whether it be online. It's can we meet the seller's expectations, number one. Number two, can we accomplish the goals that they set out? And with an auction, the seller is in control of everything. The date, the place, the time, the terms, conditions, no contingencies on the contract, no contingencies on building inspection. So everything is, really in favor of the seller because he gets to name the terms. Buyer gets to name the price. So that's the thing that the buyer has, and it's in his favor. So you marry those two things together, and you'll produce successful results. The seller's already named the agreeable terms in which under which he will sell. Buyer gets to name the price. So the strategy going in, if it is a great piece of property, you can accommodate a crowd. I am 100% want to be on site of something that I'm selling to draw more attention to it, to get them to look at it, and that works really well. So, and then you can, the bells and whistles, are you going to simulcast it? Are you going to do it online in conjunction with the live auction? There's a short window with auctions as far as marketing time. Usually work with 30 to 45 days, and then we can spend a great deal in marketing before we bring it to the public and declare it sold. But I don't know. Hopefully, I answered your question, Chad.
Right.
Everyone's different with whatever we're selling. Whether it's a gun auction, how you going to handle it, how you going to disperse the firearms, whether it's cars, whether it's real estate, cabins, homes, residential. Luckily we've got a staff that is brilliant, and as far as laying out a marketing campaign for everything that we sell, this is our end-use buyer, and that's who we're going after to get that retail dollar amount for our clients. And I want as much as that we can get, because working on a commission basis, the more we make for our sellers, the more our company can realize too. So that's the incentive.
Right. I mean, I hear it all the time. Why should I go to auction with it? Why should I go to auction?
Well, I
What do
think
you
the
tell people
biggest
when they're thinking
thing
about
is
that?
you want to be in control. You know when your property is going to sell. You know how you're going to get paid for it, and when you're going to get paid for it, and you can set the terms. And that's the biggest thing. Say for instance, you've got an aged home that you've not lived in. You might have inherited. You don't know the condition of it too well, and you don't want to do a lot of fixing repairs on a building inspection that gets done in a traditional manner. You auction it, and it's as is where is, and it closes out in 30 days, and we hand you a check. And that's the biggest advantage, I think, to auction versus a traditional method. And then I'm a real estate agent too, and I've got my license to enable me to auction real estate through my auction license. But I love the auction method. I'm sold on it and have been for 36 years. And it just, you and I do it day in, day out. We're very comfortable with the auction method, and it works. But a lot of times, we have to educate our sellers who might be an estate administrator or an executor, executrix, and they have maybe never done it in their lifetime. And they're, concerned about it, apprehensive about it, and our job is to make them comfortable because you and I know it works. And we just
Right.
have to explain the process. When it comes to that point in time, it's an exciting, it's an exciting venue to take property at auction, personal property or real estate.
Right. I know a lot of people scared. Thinking back at the commercial property up in Pigeon Forge that we just sold recently for the family out of Ohio. They was offered, what was they offered $500,000 for the property, I think, and
What did it bring, Chad?
I think 700 something thousand at
So
auction, I
about
believe it
two
was.
hundred some $1,000.
Yeah.
They
So
would
I
have
mean
left on the table had they not auctioned it.
that seller was about to kiss me on the lips when we got done with that, and if he was better looking, I'd probably let him. But
Yeah,
anyway, we had
I
a
love
that was
hearing those success stories, and we've
right.
got 36 years of those success stories. And the basic is that good property sells good, bad property is hard to sell. and we've been fortunate to handle a lot of good property at auction. And when we handle the bad property, guess what? We don't give it away, and it sells. And sometimes it's a necessity that that it needs to be sold to settle the estate. It may be a overgrown eyesore. You know what? I can clean it up. It's kind of like having a car and you're getting ready to sell it. You want to wash it and shine it up a little bit before you get it so you can get top dollar. We do the same thing with real estate. Sometimes it needs surveyed and run through the planning commission and health department approval and then all the steps necessary to bring it to the market. And of course, you do the majority of that as we both oversee that process, and then we auction the end product off to the public. So whatever is necessary, be it personal property wise, real estate wise, getting it ready. The people see us the day of the auction and say, wow, they just 1 hour's work, but they don't see the months in preparation leading up to it, or us putting batteries in tractors and cars and getting them to turn over and getting our hands dirty as we was 15 minutes ago.
Yeah, and snakes in the garage and the rats in the house and
Uh,
stuff. So,
but cleaning
so
them
I
out.
kind of want to doing this podcast. I'm kind of wanting to go into it as being. I want to be known as your estate auctioneer. I want to be, when you're having to deal with an estate, I want people to say, "Hey, let's call Chad up at Todd Thompson's." But so doing the estates all over the years, have you ever found anything doing an estate that you was like, wow, didn't know I was going to be finding this, or
Yeah,
you ever
absolutely.
uncovered anything valuable, or
We had done an estate several years ago, and there was usually in putting an estate together, I like starting in the kitchen. That's the most difficult room, gathering everything up because it's got the most pieces. There was a corner cupboard in there, and I pulled the center drawer out to clean out the pins and accumulated whatever in the drawer, and I felt some things in the corner of the cupboard, and I pulled out $8,641 in cash, and that's the most money. We found money in several homes over the years in cleaning out estates. That's the most that I have ever personally found, and we found other things, but cash-wise, that's the most money, and but that was fun to turn that into the attorney the next day and say, "This is what we found in the corner cupboard. Might need to, make record of that."
what's some of the coolest things you sold before in auctions other than real estate?
You know, some oddities, I guess, when you find some things in the estate, they want you to handle the merchandise and just turn it into cash for them because it's easier to divide up the money. Gold dentures that we sold out of people's, dental work, that's kind of an oddity, and we've sold that amongst other things. That's the one thing that's kind of come to mind that's kind of odd that we have sold. How about you, Chad?
I don't know. Probably I don't know. I'm asking questions. I'm not
Oh,
answering
okay.
them today, Todd.
That's
I
okay.
don't know. I guess some of the up there at the estate up in Gatlinburg, they just had all kinds of cool antiques in it. Where all those Hummels were, three
Right.
foot Hummel, But I don't know. I'll have to think on that one too.
Well, you tend to find things that have been out of circulation for a long time and you didn't know existed. You and I both pulled some vehicles out of a garage, that are coming up to an upcoming auction. That's a joy just to find and clean them up and see what you've got. A matching numbers 1970 Dodge Charger with a 440 four-barrel, Magnum engine. That'll get your blood pumping. Nothing will, And then
That's
a really
exciting.
clean, short bed 86 model Dodge Ram truck. Then just a variety of things. Again, things that have been out of circulation for a while, personal property wise. I'm thinking of, we were asked to handle a property about a month ago that had sit dormant for 6 years. It was a structure in a swimming pool that was part of an HOA, and everybody kind of passed on it and didn't see the value in it. And but you have a vision for it, can be converted to short-term rental, and we ended up at the end of the day, I think we sold it for 450,000 at auction. And it's a prime example that it needed a lot of work, and the fix and repair schedule has been great, but we convert it to cash in a readily manner. That's what the beauty of the auction is, I think,
It
is
is.
the
It still
timeliness of
was
it.
200. That was still $200,000 more than what it should have sold for, in my opinion.
I
In
think
the
so.
condition.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but that's good. So, everybody's getting older now. The population's getting older. You're getting older. Uh,
When you gonna get
I'm
out of
getting
business? Is that the
older.
next question?
So, so you've got all these baby boomers. They're they've got their houses and it's full of everything. And, people don't stay around like they used to. The kids, a lot of the kids are moving off. And so we get phone calls a lot about states or so what would you do if you lived in a different state and your mom and dad lived here in East Tennessee and they're having to move to assisted living or they've passed away? How easy is it to call Todd Thompson up and what would you do for them?
Well, my first recommendation would be call any attorney in that hometown that where your mom and daddy was at, any bank president in that hometown where your mom and daddy lived, and get a reference on Todd Thompson Auctions. That's the best recommendation. You can look on our website and for the past 15, 20 years and see every piece of real estate, personal property that we've sold and what price we glean from it. And that's good to see that, to know, what kind of pricing is going along with it. But the biggest thing is knowing who you're doing business with. You can call us and we can take and make it a single desk service provider. Being, you don't have to clean it out. We will. I think to date the record is 7 dumpsters out of one property, buildings, outbuildings, garage, shop buildings, house. And we'll do that. We'll do the heavy lifting. We've got means to take care of it. We've got connections where we'll hire the survey if it needs done. We'll get the house cleaned out. We'll do everything necessary that you don't have to. And at the end of the process, we'll leave it broom swept clean and auctioned. And, where you don't need to struggle with, worrying about it. That's the biggest thing. If you're doing estate type work, it's a huge undertaking, and we've got staff that go in. It can take care of everything, lot it out, box it up, remove the unsellable merchandise, prep the property, mow the lawn, trim the hedges, or whatever that you allow us to do to ready whatever we're asked to sell, and we'll convert it to something that you can divide up among the heirs of that family. But call, like I said, anyone in our hometown, get a reference on us, and see if you want to do business with us. And then follow up with a meet and greet. We'll meet you at the property, whatever you've got that you're considering selling, whether it be real estate or personal property, and we'll give you, good, honest feedback. I think some of the best auctions that they've never entertained ever doing an auction, and then at the end of it they've been converted to loving the auction method and working
A
for
lot
them
of people
multiple
are
times.
just a lot of people are just so overwhelmed. They get started with it, and the house is, a mess, and it's just hard to do. I did it with Dad when Dad
Mm,
passed away.
exactly.
I guess that was the first auction that I didn't really work with. I just stepped aside and let the staff do it. But it's done.
It's a hard process. It is.
It's hard. It's real hard. It is. So, auctioneer, real estate agent. What else do you do in life? What else you got? What's your side hustles? What else have you
Besides,
done investment wise? What else you got?
I make my living doing auctions, and as far as investment wise, I've luckily got into the storage business, and you and I both, we have some large scale storage that, can accommodate like tractor trailer size storage. I like that type of business, and it's proven very well. We have 2 complexes, and we love that business, the locker storage units, and we have them here in our office facility in Seymour, and then we have another location in Sevierville, Tennessee. But that's been a good, something that your daughters and my daughters, when we get it paid for someday, that I'm glad Daddy built these, and have this income.
Yeah, it'll be when they'll have fun with it for sure. That's for sure. So, hey, what's changed since you started? Let's back up
Well,
and punt just a second. How much has it changed the business since we all started?
180 degrees, starting out at live auctions and, assembling a crowd, walking them over the property, planning your day, where you're going to be at the lunchtime, and keeping a crowd for 6, 8 hours for a whole day. And, if we keep a crowd an hour, we're flying. We try not to have a sale that's going to last over 45 minutes, or you're going to lose your crowd. So, and then from that and going into the online auctions, and, we probably, I don't know, percentage wise, 80%, 90% online now versus live on site auctions. And it's not because we give the sellers the options and make recommendations. Again, both of them have huge benefits. The online just opens it up geographically to anybody in the country, and they can bid at their leisure. I remember probably 20 years ago, the first online auction we did, And I'm there. We sold the contents out of a house, actually, and it's an online auction. And I was always concerned that our auction crowd was graying like I am, and not getting fresh new bodies at the auction, at the live auctions. And then how do you get new participants? Always worried about that. Let's get somebody else involved in a live auction. And an online will do that. And so we're there loading out the online auction. I'm shaking hands with people. I've never seen these people. They've never been at my live auction. Where did they come from? And I'm looking at them. They're wearing scrubs. They've been bidding while they're probably working at the hospital, and hopefully not got their hands in somebody doing surgery or something. But whole new crowd versus a live auction, and it's online, and that got new blood and injected into the live auction, so you got more people participating. That's what an online does, in my opinion. And besides the timeliness of it and the convenience of it and the geographical no boundaries of it, it works really well for that. So
I think it's bringing more money too for the estate part of it for sure. The online is
I do too.
for
I
buyers
agree
and
with you
stuff.
wholleheartedly. I think for the online, it does. It does.
Right. So you got into the storage business. What about anything else you've done? Any kind of tell us about you've done some flipping?
I have had a tremendous amount of failures, if the truth be
We're going to
known.
talk about that
And
here just a second. We've got a thing on here called your biggest win and your biggest loss. So
oh,
we'll
really?
hit that here just a second.
Okay,
Yeah, your
so
biggest
stay away
win,
from that. What
biggest
was it?
loss.
So
So
back
yeah.
up to the other. What was the question again?
So we've done some flipping. Me and you have.
Yeah.
So how do you know if you get a good deal on flipping a house? How
When
how
you
can
sell
people
it
out
and
there?
you've either made money or lost money.
So how hard? It's so hard to flip a house now.
Well, this is Grandpa used to say, and you've heard me repeat this: you make your money when you buy, you see your profit when you sell. You got to buy it at the
Right.
right price. And then where I have a problem is keeping within a budget because my wife, she watches these
Hmm.
renovation shows, and in 30 minutes they take a house and renovate this thing, and then they sell it for big money. And it doesn't happen in 30 minutes. I tell her, it takes a matter of time, and it takes a lot more money. I
Mm.
remember one in particular house that you and I did that, we had a budget in mind, and then we walked away shaking our heads thinking, how did we spend that much money on this house?
Mm.
And, but it looked great when we got done, and it's a good investment for us. It's not a flipper that we was going to resell. It's something that we're holding on
It's a
to.
good thing because we couldn't resell it.
And that's right. Holding on to it and rent it out.
Right. So no, I talked to a guy the other day. He has flipped 1,800 houses in our area. 18
1800.
1,800 houses. And he told me he feels like he's dumber now than he's ever have been.
Isn't that wild?
Just because this,
1800.
how the times have changed so much. So that's pretty cool. Yeah, so we're doing it. We do a thing. Your biggest wins in real estate and your biggest losses, or investments. Investments. Biggest wins, biggest losses. Where did you really? Because anybody that's ever made it or is making it has learned from their mistakes, and I know I have for sure. So, where's some investments you've done in the past where you just your
We
wife
want to talk
says,
with the successful ones first or the failures?
"You just tell me. It don't matter."
I think a minute. I was in the grocery business and for a period of time until I was successfully went through two houses and all my equipment and inventory and lost it. I moved to Tennessee. And that was a huge trial at a young age and just getting freshly married. The good thing about it, you learn, you're young, you bounce back. I do think, being a Christian, looking at God's word and how it says to sow seed in the morning, seed in the evening, I think it's a biblical truth about taking risk. And as you age and get gray like I am, I think the natural inclination is to withdraw from taking risk. But I think biblically we're supposed to do more risk taking because we have aged and we've got experience, and through that experience, you gain knowledge. And so, yeah, it's tougher at my age now to take that calculated risk because it's a natural inclination to pull back and think, hey, but I think it's wise to do that because you're more knowledgeable now. So, at a young age, I grew up working in the grocery stores for my parents. And so I would work in the produce department, the meat department, the deli, the stock floors, and whatever they needed. Put the boy in there, train him, and and that was a good work. Love that work. I actually met my wife while I worked in the bakery department. And so that was my background from the time I was, I don't know how young that I was stocking shelves in a grocery store. And then my parents, everybody has trials. They got divorced and sold assets. And so I'm left, okay, I got to figure this out. What am I going to do for a living? And I bought my own grocery store and actually was in the black the first year and made a profit. And I learned a lot about non-compete real quick because the guy that I bought the grocery store from, he went down the street and built a super center. And, the old saying is, I cleaned my plow. Boy, my plow got clean. And that was a learning experience. And so that brought us to Tennessee. And that was while we were in Kentucky. Moved to Tennessee. This is where my mom lived. I kept visiting her down here, and I loved it. And so moved down here, tried different things, worked in a factory. I worked as a surveyor, which led me into what I do today in the auction business. I'm kind of the rare breed, I guess. I'm not a generational auctioneer, meaning my dad wasn't an auctioneer, my grandparents weren't auctioneers, yours weren't either, Chad. And for us, we're first generation auctioneers. And there's, I love hearing the stories from generational auctioneers, but we're not part of that. We started different routes and got us to where we're at today. And so I had a lot of past work experiences, like a lot of people did, and I had a lot of business experience from different venues. As I told you, grocery experience. I was actually had a bait and tackle shop at one time. I invested in restaurants. The bait and tackle didn't work out. The restaurants didn't work out either. And then I sunk my teeth into in real estate, thankfully. And God, has a way of protecting, guys that just count 1 to 100 for a living. And I felt, at 27 years of age, after going to auction school, that's exactly where I need to be. I told my wife one time, I said, I was ready made for this job and I love what I do, And she said, what do you mean, honey? I said, one day I'm working on a tractor, getting it ready to run so we can sell it. One day we're cleaning up real estate, my surveying and my experience back in there and selling real estate, and all has funneled into what I do today and have been for 36 years. And so fortunate in that regard. But man, I've had not terrible, they've all been life lessons. You're going to get your education one of two ways. I've said this before too. You're going to go to school and get that education, or you're going to learn from experience. Regrettably, that's not regrettable. I fell into the latter stage and learned it from experience. And those life lessons are, they'll go with you for life. For the listeners,
Right. Yeah.
while I was surveying, there's in biblical days, the old matriarch of the family would take the youngest child and take them to the corner of their property. And you know what they would do to them? Beat the living bejeebus out of them. Because they
My
would
dad
never.
must have read that scripture a lot.
Yeah. Well, it's not scripture. It's just how they showed the child where their property corners were. Because that child will never forget where they took that beating at that property corner. He would go around to the property corners and beat that child. That youngest child remembers exactly where he got that beating, I guarantee you. And that's how they used to pass on the lineage of the real estate to the youngest, and so on and so forth. But that's, yeah, things like that fascinate me about real estate. Good question.
Let's go. All right. So, what's your best investment you've done so far? Or your best?
I love the storage business as far as long-term investment that builds residual income. I love what I do for a living, the auction business. And I tell folks that's what I do for a living. Investment wise, I love the storage business because, well, personally, you know how many people it takes to run a storage business. It's minimal. So you don't have a huge employee, overhead. It eats up a lot of real estate because you and I both put up big buildings and you got to have turner radius and things like that. But back to the question, the building the residual income for when you get old like me and retire, that's important so that, you might want to take your wife out to dinner one night and the kids can go to Dollywood.
Seems like they want to eat every day.
I don't get it. Every day they want something to eat. I'm with you. But the storage business has been a huge success. I say hone in and focus in on something and build it up. And while you called it a side gig, I guess, but that's been rewarding. I love that business.
Yeah, you made a good business for sure there. I know it was tough getting started, but
Yeah, it was. It
it's
was. But
it's
I
it's
think
so
people
good that
call
it's so
flex
good that
space
everybody else
now. Is
wants
that
to
what they
do it
call it?
now.
Everybody's
Yeah,
doing it.
everybody.
We were the first one in Tennessee to develop that. There was two in the country, one in Dayton, Ohio, and one in Arizona. And I went up to Dayton, Ohio, and looked at the guy's complex, and he was an open book, shared a lot with me. And from that conversation, we came and built one in Tennessee. And it has proved, we've been doing that for, I don't know, maybe 22, 23 years now. And I find that very fascinating and rewarding. Sure.
Yeah, it's been good for sure. Well, Todd, I appreciate you coming on today. And
I am
so
honored that I'm one of your guests.
you're the first one.
Am I?
Yes, you're the first one. Not really, but I got to tell you that. But
Okay. Hopefully it won't kill your show.
I'm probably done after this. But anyway, that's okay. It's been fun while it lasted. So, where do they find Todd Thompson Auctions at?
ToddThompsonAuctions.com. Sold it right there. ToddThompsonAuctions.com.
Seymour, Tennessee.
Seymour, Tennessee.
Right?
Yes.
All right. Good deal. Todd, I appreciate it. Thanks a lot. One thing you said to me a long time ago that I'm going to take with me, and it's a little sentimental thing here.
What?
You told me when I came on board, you said something about the only thing I want to do is leave a good name for my girls, a lasting legacy for my girls. And I have taken that to heart with me. That's what I want to do. I don't want to leave any bad names for my kids, for sure. But
it don't take but a second to erase it.
yeah, it's a pleasure working with you. You're top notch, class act, and anybody know Todd Thompson in our area knows class act guy. So,
Chad, it's been a pleasure. Thank you for allowing me on your show.
yeah, I appreciate you, brother.
Well, that's a wrap for this episode of Call Us Ode Podcast. If you got value for this, make sure you like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you'll never miss an episode. Drop a comment below on your thoughts or questions about the auction market. We'd love to hear from you. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you on the next one.